Well,
Always something going on over there. And then, of course, you've got the whole lingering impact of Trump.
it really does feel like this perfect storm of global challenges.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everything's happening at once. And honestly,
I think the most immediate, most pressing issue has got to be Ukraine. I mean, Woodward, he doesn't hold back.
he really paints this picture of Biden and Putin locked in this, like, high-stakes chess match.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm curious, how are you reading Biden's strategy here, especially with everything so volatile right now?
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you said volatile. I mean,
We are talking about a major land war in Europe, something that, frankly, we have not seen since World War II.
right.
So Biden's trying to walk this incredibly difficult tightrope.
He's got to support Ukraine. Right. We're all behind Ukraine.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, he has to prevent this thing from spiraling into a full-blown global conflict. And we all know what that could mean.
Yeah.
Potentially even a nuclear one. It's heavy stuff. Every single decision, every move he makes carries this enormous weight.
And it could have ripple effects across the globe. I mean, we are all watching this very closely.
And to make matters even more complicated, Woodward keeps mentioning this whole back-channel diplomacy thing.
So what is that? In practice, I mean, how does that even work?
And is it really effective in a situation this tense?
Okay, so picture this. You've got these high-ranking officials, sometimes even, intelligence operatives, working behind the scenes.
Totally away from the cameras, away
Well,
from the headline.
And they're communicating directly with their counterparts in other countries.
So this isn't like official negotiations then?
No. This is more about testing the waters, sending out subtle messages.
Hopefully preventing those misunderstandings that could have absolutely disastrous consequences.
Can you give an example of when this has actually worked?
Oh, sure. One of the most famous examples of successful back-channel diplomacy is what led to the Camp David Accords.
Israel and Egypt back in the day, that was huge.
Right. So it can work.
It can. But, and this is a big but,
It's risky. It bypasses all the normal diplomatic channels.
you're relying on trust, which, let's face it, isn't always in abundance in these situations.
That is fascinating, I have to say. But man, also a little nerve-wracking.
It's like a high-stakes poker game, but the fate of the world's at stake instead of just some chips.
That's one way to put it. The stakes are incredibly high. Really high.
It's almost like he's fighting a war on two fronts,
Yeah, one overseas and one right here at home.
Exactly. And that's what's so crazy, right?
It really highlights how connected domestic and foreign policy really are. Like, you can't separate them.
Not at all. And Trump's shadow presidency, which, by the way, is a term we'll come back to.
That has to have very real consequences for how other countries see us.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, think about it.
Some of our closest allies, they're watching all of this, and they're concerned, especially after January 6th.
That was a dark day.
It was. And it sent a message, whether we wanted it to or not. And that message was instability.
Wow.
They see that as a crack in the foundation of American democracy.
Can you blame them?
And it makes them question whether the U.S. can really be a reliable partner on the world stage. Can we be there for them?
It's hard to be taken seriously as a global leader if your own house isn't in order.
Exactly.
And I have to imagine that countries like China and Russia are, well, they're not just sitting on the sidelines, are they?
Let's just say they're watching all of this with great interest.
Right. So how do you think they're interpreting what's happening here?
Countries that have different agendas than us, that maybe see us as a threat, they see this turmoil as an opportunity.
An opportunity to do what?
To advance their own goals, challenge the status quo. They might be more likely to make moves they wouldn't even consider if they felt like the U.S. was united.
So every time Biden makes a decision, it's not just about the immediate impact. It's about how other countries that might not have our best interests at heart, will interpret it and potentially exploit it.
You got it. It's like this multi-dimensional chess game, except the stakes are incredibly high.
So this all sounds incredibly significant when we talk about, geopolitics and all that. But how does this affect the average person listening to this right now?
That's the question we should always be asking. Because here's the thing.
These global events, they always seem far away, right? But they have a way of hitting closer to home than we think.
What do you mean?
The decisions that are made in the White House about Ukraine, about the Middle East, about everything, they have a ripple effect. They can affect our economy, the prices we pay for things, even our personal security, our ability to travel.
I never thought about it like that.
We live in a globalized world. What happens on one side of the planet affects us all.
That's a sobering thought. So we can't afford to just tune it out, even if it seems overwhelming.
Exactly. It's our responsibility to stay informed, to be engaged, and to hold our leaders accountable.
Speaking of which, let's bring it back to peril for a second.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the biggest takeaway about how Biden approaches these challenges?
You know, one thing that really comes through in the book is the emphasis on diplomacy.
Diplomacy.
Okay. Woodward really stresses that Biden believes in dialogue, even with people he disagrees with. He gets that relationships with other world leaders, that's crucial, especially now.
So it's more about finding common ground, right? Like
Yeah.
building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly. It's a much more nuanced approach than just, using military force or making demands. It's about understanding the complexities and trying to find solutions by working together.
Which makes sense given how interconnected everything is.
Exactly. Global problems need global solutions, and you don't get those without being willing to listen and engage with each other, even when it's hard.
But diplomacy, I mean, doesn't that require like trust and goodwill? And those feel kind of, well, rare these days.
So how can Biden, or any world leader for that matter, really tackle these massive global issues and deal with all the political drama back home at the same time, especially when things are so divided?
It's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
And honestly, peril doesn't really give us a clear-cut answer.
But what it does do is highlight how important leadership is.
Not just on the world stage, but here at home, too. It's about finding a way to, bring people together, remind them what we have in common, what we're all working towards.
And focusing on the things that really matter to people, jobs, healthcare, the economy, the things that affect their everyday lives.
So while he's dealing with these international crises, Biden also has to find a way to, bridge the divides in the U.S.
Exactly. It's about showing that working together, finding common ground, that's how you get things done.
Both at home and on the global stage. It's about offering a positive vision for the future, one that people from all sides can at least understand, even if they don't agree with everything.
That sounds, well, monumental is an understatement, I think.
Oh, it's a huge challenge, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But being a leader, a lot of times it means dealing with tough situations, making those tough calls, taking risks, but calculated ones.
And never, ever losing sight of the bigger picture.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive on peril, what's the one big takeaway you're hoping our listeners will leave with today?
The world's facing some serious stuff right now. I mean, conflicts all over, political instability, climate change, huge, huge issues.
Yeah.
And none of them are simple, right? They're all connected in some way. But peril reminds us that leadership, it matters now more than ever, I think.
The choices being made right now, they'll have consequences for years to come. That's the world we're going to be living in.
It's almost like saying, hey, listener, you have a part to play in this too, not just the politicians.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and watch it all happen.
Yeah.
We have to stay informed, be willing to have those tough conversations, and hold our leaders accountable, and speak up for the kind of world we want to live in.
It's a call to action, that's what it is. So to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive into peril has given you some things to think about, a new way of looking at the challenges and, the opportunities too, facing President Biden and, well, all of us on this planet. Keep asking those questions, keep digging for information, and